I know you probably have a lot better things perhaps to do, but so thank you for hanging in here and listening to me. As you said, my name is Jim Heist. Many of you may have all recognized the name. I've been around basically doing programs for Florida AIA for about 15 years, speaking at the convention, so on and so forth. I am a 20-year veteran of PGT University, where I was a senior trainer and manager. And about 3 years ago, went into what I refer to as semi-retirement, where I give PGT 1 week a month, basically, where I teach classes via Zoom. So that gives you a little idea of who I am in case you didn't recognize the name. The name of the class here today is going to be Proactive Mitigation, and we'll start to go through it here. If you have questions, I see a chat box kick on occasionally. I'll try and stop and answer it and see at that particular point. All right. So let's get started here. Let's go. This is the standard AI continuing education form that that you've seen numerous times. It says that Florida AIA is a registered provider with the American Institute of Architects in continuing education, in which you're going to be receiving credits for taking time to listen to me today. Well, the objective for today basically is to provide a better understanding of the proactive advantages of impact-resistant laminated glass. All right, so we're going to talk a lot about glass today as well. So what's the definition of proactive? Well, proactive, and I'm a firm believer of definitions because I'll show you in the next slide. There's a lot of people that get definitions confused, all right? Proactive is the acting in anticipation of future problems, needs, or changes. Reactive shows a response to a stimulus. In other words, for example, a hurricane, they're reacting to it at the last minute. Mitigation is the act of lessening the force or intensity of something that's unpleasant. And as it's just mentioned, an example would be a hurricane situation, okay? Now, mitigation is a word that a lot of people are surprising enough, are not familiar with. If I talk to people in the general public and I ask them, what is mitigation? Sometimes they're really far off, let's say. And so I actually found on the website, FEMA did the same thing. And I'm going to show you a little video here. I am going to use some videos today, which you aren't going to be able to get on the PDF. But if any of you want any of these videos, if you reach out to me, text me or email me, and Wendy is providing that information to you today, I'd be more than happy to share anything I have with y'all. Okay. So let's look at what is mitigation, right? We'll see what FEMA says. Can you hear this by any chance? Wendy, can you hear the speak?
No.
Okay, you can't hear it.
I sure can't.
Okay. Well, this is basically, and I'll explain what it is. This is where FEMA went around and talked to people with a microphone, asking what mitigation is, and got all kinds of confusing information. One guy said it's where you irrigate the fields, type of a deal. I mean, you got it confused with irrigation. So there's a lot of concepts on what mitigation is. So, but that's what this video actually shows. So if you want a copy of it, reach out to me and I'll send it to you. That's all. So the mitigation basics, according to FEMA, for every dollar that's spent on mitigation, anywhere from $6 to $11 in post-storm cleanup and rebuilding is going to be saved. And if you can reach out, this is a website you can actually go to, is mitigation for homeowners may reduce potential damage in future storms /FEMA.gov. And then it's also, while mitigation will never eliminate the risk to homeowner, it will reduce loss, and in many cases can actually save a home, as I'm going to demonstrate to you coming up. This is from the National Institute of Building Sciences. It says, according to the National Institute of Building Sciences, one of the best ways to safeguard our communities against natural disasters is to adopt and follow up to-date hazard-resistant building codes. There's 5 reasons building code should be matter to you, and you can find that again at FEMA.gov. So this is the agenda I'm going to go through this morning. We're going to talk about the hurricane season data. I'm going to go a little bit into explain about impact glass, how it's manufactured. We'll talk about the window and door opening protection options that are within the code. And then there's a 24/7 protection I want to talk to you about that I think is extremely important. And I try and teach salespeople that that's more important than just selling a window, an impact window to protect against hurricane. And then there's a 5S approach that I'm going to explain what that is. And then there's some myths and facts that the general public has out there. And I'm going to go over that with you and then explain to you where you can get more information on everything that we're going to talk about this morning. So let's start off with the hurricane data season. All right. In the 20 to 23 season, all right, it shows the amount of hurricanes that we had, named storms. And you can see in the 2020 set all new records with 30 named storms, 13 hurricanes and six major hurricanes. And then to 21, it went down just a little bit. And then in 22, it went down a little bit more. What you see, what you'll find if you looked at a graph, I've studied it before, is a hurricane will go down for several years and go back up. And it's just like a graph, right? With highs and lows. And we're about to reach the high end again. It's going to come up. The prediction for 24, I'm going to add that. I just got it, the most recent one. So I'm going to add that onto this slide after the program. So it'll probably be in the PDF when you get it. Okay. But it's going to be, it could set the 2020 records at that point. It could break those. So it is going to be a very, very active season. Right. Now, this is a mainland picture of the mainland hurricane strikes in the United States, all right, from 1950 to 2022. As you look at that, they're actually graded from category 1 down to category 5. And you can see there's not very many safe areas down through there like that. If you go back to even longer than that, as I'll show you on the slide, there is no safe area. It's not a matter of if, but really a matter of when. I like this down here for homeowners. It gives a good explanation. It shows possible damage from the 5 different categories. Minimal damage, basically, for a category 1. Moderate damage, you can see the water going up higher onto 2. And then you go to a 3, it becomes extensive damage. The water's going to go into the homes in that. And then 4 would be extreme damage, and 5 is catastrophic damage. So we're going to show you some images of that as we go through this. This goes from 1851 to 2011. All right, that's the cyclone tracks that if you go to the NOAA and NOAA.gov, this is where I pulled it from. But you'll see here's Florida hidden underneath all of this, where my mouse is, and there is no safe area. So it's not really a matter of if, but a matter of when. And what I was surprised at, which I didn't realize, I guess, is that when you look at the east coast of Florida, much more active activity than on the West Coast during that period of time against California and that. And I would have thought if anyone asked me, I would have thought it probably would have been equal, but it isn't, right? We're on the more active side by far. Now the hurricane return period, all right. It says a frequency at which a certain intensity, all right, of a hurricane can be expected within a given distance of a given location. They give it within 58-mile radius. So in simple terms, a return period of 20 years for a major hurricane means that on average, during the previous 100 years, a category 3 or greater hurricane passed within 58 miles of that location. All right. We would expect then, and on average, an additional 5 category 3 or greater hurricanes within the radius over the next 100 years. So it just, again, there's a lot of information that you can use on hurricanes. And this is all comes from NOAA.gov. So it's easier to secure these. Someone asked, how do I secure copies of these charts? Mr. Heiss, my name is Jim. My father was Mr. Heiss. All right. So I'm a very casual person. To answer that question, again, you go to NOAA.gov, NOAA.gov. That's where I got these from. You will have copies of these on your PDF for this particular program. So you have access in there. And if you want something that you're not happy with from there, reach out to me and I'll send you exactly what you see here. All right. So I want to make all this stuff available to you. And where I think it's good for you guys as architects is because you're talking to customers before the homes and that are built. So it gives you an opportunity not to scare them, but to give reality, charts showing this is what we deal with, right? And this is what you need to be thinking of. So yeah, Wendy put down www.noaa.gov. All right, so but I found that to be an interesting chart as well also. Reasons for hurricane protection now. All right. Hurricane force winds that breach an internal window or door can cause failure of the entire building due to internal pressures. So what happens when a window door is breached, like you see here, it actually triples the uplift on the roof and on the walls. And that's what causes homes literally to actually explode from the inside, it looks like it. And what I would refer to it to, and I'm going to show you a video. It's like if you blow into a balloon with enough air, what happens? The balloon expands and eventually, because of the pressures, it explodes. And that's really what happens with a home. I'm going to demonstrate a video to show you that. So internal pressures is effectively tripled at that. So that's why you want to prevent, excuse me, windows or doors from being breached in a hurricane situation. Now, I don't know if any of us are familiar with the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. I'm going to show you the video. A very brief background. They are the insurance industry. And in 2010, they built a $30 million facility in South Carolina. And it's on a separate grid that uses so much power to operate this system, where they can actually put two-story homes into a building on a turntable so they can rotate it so they get the direction for the wind, positive and negative, and they can recreate up to a Category 4 hurricane, as well as wildfires and even man-made hailstorms. Right, so this is where a lot of the requirements are starting to come from the testing at this facility. So I'm going to show you what you're going to look at. My understanding is you don't have any sound windows, so I'm going to explain what it is. The home on the right is going to be what's called a fortified home. A fortified home is a code plus home. The home on the left was built according to code, and it actually was inspected by building officials in South Carolina. This is the home on the right is the same home. This is September 15th. You're going to see three different tests. This is October 19th. That home on the right is the same home that's been there for all three tests. All right. Now the third test, I was invited with the media to watch, is this one here on October 28th. And what I saw, I'll explain to you what I actually saw as this went on. The when the window and door, I outlined the door in red. When that was breached, what I saw was instead of the walls being vertical up and down, they started to bow out a little bit. Again, just like blowing into a balloon. And it created enough pressure that that's what caused that roof to blow off the way it did. And it actually blew off high enough to destroy or damage the sprinkler system that they had in the building. So and we got to go out and experience this firsthand and watch it. So this is what a hurricane is going to do when a window door is breached. Now that home on the right was the same home that went through all three tests. That home on the right was what the insurance industry calls a fortified home. In the old days, before this was invented or this concept was, I used to call it a code plus home. But the difference in cost between the home on the right that sustained all three of those examples where the home on the left had to keep getting replaced because it blew apart. All right, that home on the right only cost $3,000 more to build than the home on the left. There's basically three major concepts that were different. One is the home on the left. All right, that had an in-swing door, and the only thing that holds an in-swing door is the hardware. The home on the right was an outswing door, so now it had the hardware plus the door frame to hold it. So that's not even a cost factor. The major cost factors for that $3,000, one was a home on the right, they use ring shank nails. And if you're not familiar with the ring shank nail, it kind of looks like a screw. It's got grooves around it. But if you've ever tried to pull one out of a 2x4, it'll actually break the head off. You can't get it out. So it does add a substantial cost to build a home with ring shank nails, but it's well worth it. The other major difference is the building codes, which a lot of people, the general public, don't realize. Building codes are basically the minimum. And so there is a transfer of load requirements where they have to transfer the load from the roof to the walls and the walls to the foundation in the building code system. However, that's the minimum. So there are a lot of extra straps, basically, tying everything together. And that's those two concepts, the last two that I explained, are what really added only $3,000 difference in cost. And I don't know why anyone would not pay the extra dollars when they see what the difference can be. So this video, if you haven't seen it before and want access to it, again, I can send it to you. But if you go to disastersafety.org, that's where I got it from. You can download it from there. Okay. And I think it's something that I believe starts with you guys as architects to explain to people that, what building code is and that you might want to think about going above and beyond building code. And this is a good example. Okay. Now, the fortified home program actually, it says that the construction standards and methods allow homeowners to protect their homes and against severe thunderstorms, high winds, etc. Since 2008, there's only been about 10, it's up to about 10% now of single family dwelling homes are being used or built basically to meet the fortified home program. You can reach out to IBHS and actually work with a engineer there and design a home basically to be fortified. And they have a fortified program for new construction, but also for retrofit as well, also, which I'll show you here. This is a retrofit one. This was a from Hurricane Ike when it hit Gilchrist Island, just outside of Texas. I don't remember the year, but it's irrelevant, I guess. But it's you couldn't turn on your computer without seeing this image that I'm showing you right now. And they called it in the news media "Last House Standing," and it really wasn't. The reality was is that there were 12 fortified homes that were on the Gilchrist Island, but this was the picture that showed the most devastation, where all these other homes just all disappeared from the hurricane, but this one didn't. And this was actually a retrofit. This home was damaged from Hurricane Rita, I think it was. That was before, prior to Ike, and it had some damage to it. And the owners went to the IBHS facility in Tampa, and they worked with them. And the engineers from there got a hold of a contractor in Texas, and they fortified this existing home. And as you can see, everything else is all gone. Very minimal damage here. So again, the technology is there for both new construction and retrofit. In my home in Florida, I saved myself about $800 a year on my home insurance because it was an existing home, and all I had to do to satisfy the inspector was add some more straps from my roof to the walls and the walls to the foundation, and it saved me on my insurance cost. And that's really what the insurance industry wants you to do. They want to strengthen the homes so that they can lower the premiums. All right, and hopefully more insurance companies can actually come to Florida. So Joel asked a question here. What do they mean by concrete frame? Are they referring to a foundation system? When you say they, I'm not quite sure who you're talking about, they, a concrete frame. Generally, when someone talks about a concrete frame, the general consensus is they're talking about a block home versus a home a stick home is the easiest way to put it. All right. Well, the quotations on the previous slide, I have to go back and look. But it's probably when they say a foundation like that, they're referring to a block home. That's a standard response on that. And there's different types of concrete you can go into, but the most standard is the block home. All right. And let's move here on. This is another one that was in Mexico Beach after Hurricane Michael. This one here, this is the reason I want to show you this. This is crazy. There's a video that after this I'm not going to show because you're not getting the sound, so I'm going to explain it to you. This home was built by a doctor and his son. And they didn't build this home to just withstand a Category 5 hurricane. They built this home to withstand a 250-mile-an-hour wind. So the technology is there, right? You can do that. Going to that extreme, though, it's going to be a lot more expensive, obviously. But that's a tornado strength. So again, the technology and construction is there. It's just that people have to be presented, and then they have to be willing to spend the extra dollars to do it. My belief is that I think we would have a lot more fortified homes if the customers were aware of it. And I have a feeling that a lot of contractors don't present this option to homeowners simply because it's going to add some cost. And from my experience with and again, I'm not trying to badmouth anyone, but my experience in working with the building commission and helping writing codes for about 12 years in Florida, um, the Florida Home Builders Association, anytime I want to add something, a code, the concept comes up is that if it adds any cost to the home construction, they're gonna veto it down. They don't want to add any extra cost. So I think that's why they don't actually present it. But I think for the homeowner's sake, and you guys have that opportunity oftentimes to talk to homeowners prior to even a contractor. So this is something I think IBHS you need to be aware of. Okay. This is just an interview from the TV station with the doctor and his son explaining what I just explained to you. All right. That they built it for a 250-mile-an-hour wind. Why? Building code questions. All right. This is a question I like to ask homeowners. All right. Is that are building codes designed and written to save lives or to save homes? And it's amazing how many people have no concept what I'm referring to on that. They think building codes are going to save their homes. And that's not, if you if I'm a contractor, and next question says, if a contractor is telling you that he's going to build your home according to code, what is he really telling you? What he's telling you is that I'm going to build your home as cheap as I can without going to jail. He doesn't have a choice because of inspections and permits. He's got to build it to code. So what homeowners have to start considering, what can we do to increase it above code? And because building codes, I'm going to demonstrate to you, aren't designed to save homes, they're designed to save lives. And people don't understand that. This is one example. In 2010, Haiti is a country with no building codes whatsoever, no permits, no inspections. All right. They had an earthquake that was a 7.0. But the key thing I want you to look at is how many buildings, or 280,000 buildings, totally collapsed and destroyed. And as a result, it caused more than 200,000 deaths. Right. Now, in the same year, there was another country that had an earthquake several hundred times stronger than Haiti, but they have building codes, right? And that happened to be Chile. They had an 8.8, which they rated at 500 times stronger than the Haiti earthquake. So, yes, there are 500,000 buildings destroyed, but they didn't totally collapse. They're destroyed, like in this image here, where they're going to have to be knocked down and rebuild, but they didn't collapse onto the people. So, look at the amount of deaths, only 795 to 500 buildings, 500,000 buildings. So again, building codes do work, right, to save lives. But if homeowners need to understand the concept that they want to save their homes, they got to go above and beyond building code. Impact glass. I want to talk a little bit about how that process works and what's included with it and what it actually does. Is first question I ask quite often in a class, and unfortunately I can't do this because Zoom. I'll ask, is glass a solid or a liquid? Can anyone in the chat box want to answer that? Feel free to. So is glass a solid or a liquid? All right. The reason being, when it's made, it's basically in a liquid form. All right. So that's what confuses people on it. And someone answered, won't mention who, liquid. All right. And that is a common response that most homeowners think, because they're intelligent enough. They've heard that how glass is made. All right. But the reality is it's not. In the old days, the chemists used to call it a static liquid glass. What I mean by that is it's kind of like water and ice. Water is a liquid, and then the ice is still it's a static liquid, right? And that's what they thought glass was. But as technology changes and processes, we understand things differently today. So it's a little bit different. In today's world, they call it amorphous, AMORPHOUS. That means it has no definite form. It's neither a solid nor a liquid. Okay. So what are some of the reason being, if you look at the molecules of a true solid, the molecules are all identical and they're interlaced together and they can't move. In a liquid, they're not interlaced together and they can move all around. And that's what a liquid does. And then being amorphous, it's in between. So got a couple times I'm back in line. Could you please make a note? Okay, that was something that's texting Wendy. So the glass basically is the molecules are very similar to a snowflake. When I grew up, all kids know that snowflakes, no two are the same, and that's kind of like the molecules of glass. So they can move, and that's why you'll find quite often if you take out a piece of glass that's 30 years old, the bottom of it's going to be thicker than the top, which means that glass actually got weaker. And there's arguments what causes that, but the most common one is that glass goes into a vertical situation in a door or a window, and because the molecules can move, gravity causes them to drift down a little bit. That's just one of the theories out there. But there's a lot of different names for glass. There's raw glass, annealed glass, float glass, stock glass, lights, single strength, which is a 16th of an inch, which no one does anymore, and double strength is now the standard is 1/8 inch. I don't know if anyone who does any manufacturer does 16th inch anymore. So there's different terminologies for glass. It depends on what part of the country, even what part of the state you're in sometimes. And then there's different types of treated glass. The totally untreated glass is oftentimes referred to, the most commonly is annealed or raw float glass. And then there's heat strengthened glass, which is 2 times stronger than annealed glass. And that's going to break into 8 to 10 inch pieces when it's broken. And that's what's used in a laminated product. A fully tempered glass is 4 times stronger than annealed, but it breaks into 1/4 inch size pieces when fractured. That isn't commonly used in a laminated product because the particles are so small, there's not enough tooth for adhesion to the vinyl, which I'm going to show you coming up in another picture. And then laminated glass basically is impact resistant and does meet the building codes, not just Florida, but national building codes, federal building codes to meet safety glazing requirements. All right. The two types of safety glazing is either tempered glass or laminated glass. And the reason they call it safety glazing is because people are not going to get cut from them. So what is a laminated piece of glass? It consists of two pieces of glass with a vinyl interlayer sandwiched in between. When I explain it to a homeowner, I tell them it's very similar to a grilled cheese sandwich, right? It's like two pieces of bread with the cheese in between because it's going to react the same when it's made, as I'll demonstrate to you. There's the outboard glass and the inboard glass, and then you have that vinyl interlayer that goes in between. Now, the way this works basically is you have your outboard piece here. We always start from the outside when we look at any type of glass situation, outside to inside. Then there's a spacer system here, all right? As it says on a spacer system's used to create the airspace where they can also put in gas, such as argon gas, which is very effective because it's heavier than air. So it's harder for heat or cold to transfer through it. Then you have the laminated piece over here. So that's what's referred to as a laminated insulated glass unit. So you have the combination of a laminated piece of glass and then tied in with a insulated piece of glass. Okay. So there's actually three pieces of glass as it shows through here. Now, the spacer systems will vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. TPS is the most modern, let's say, up-to-date spacer system. It stands for thermoplastic spacer system. There's Duraseal, which has some type of a foam, and then it has metal in here. And then there's Super Spacer. The depending on the type of product and what you're using, if you're talking to windows and doors to customers, and you're thinking, and they want to be very energy efficient, which I know a lot of architects want to be, it doesn't pay to have a product that has a metal Duraseal in here like that, because metal uses molecule to molecule transfer of heat, where foam does not do it. So either the Super Spacer or TPS will give better energy calculations than one with a Duraseal in it. Duraseal is really pretty old in reality. The Super Spacer came after Duraseal, and now TPS is really different in the fact that it's put in as a liquid, all right, and it's the best system out there for a spacer system. So laminated pieces of glass, there's different names that people will call it, all right. Some people call it impact glass or impact rated glass. Some people call it hurricane resistant. No one should call it hurricane proof because of liability. That's something that no one wants to take liability for. So hurricane resistant. Some people call it glass on glass or lamy glass. And then there's patents that different companies will have. For example, PGT has the term wind guard they'll use, and that's a patented name for them. And different manufacturers will have different names like that. But depending on the glass makeup, what you do have to be aware of is that typical, when I say typical laminated glass is going to weigh more than 10 pounds per square foot. There is new glass out there. Now I don't want to get into all the different types, but it's about the glass it's the Corning glass came up with it in combination with a fenestration manufacturer, where they can use glass and laminated glass now half as thin, which cuts the weight down 45 to 50%. All right. So now laminated glass doesn't weigh. Not all laminated glass will weigh 10 pounds per square foot. Could actually be 5, depending on the manufacturer. So the way it works is that then the vinyl is that there's an Eastman cutter, it's called, is going to use to cut the polyvinyl butyrol and SGP, which stands for Century Glass Plus. Right. The product that comes to us and comes to the manufacturer in rolls. Right. The PVB, it can be offered in either an 060 thickness or an 090 thickness. They don't make an 090 thickness, so they have to use two pieces of 0.045 together to make that 090. It's very pliable, and the rolls, to give you an idea, cost is very expensive. Just one roll, like you see on the roller there, is close to about $11,000. Century Glass Plus, again, is going to be in an 090 thickness normally. It's more rigid than PVB. You can't, it doesn't bend, all right, let's say. And it's typically used in doors or very large windows, like picture window, very large picture windows. And you don't need to specify, the manufacturer will determine what one goes in because you're going to specify a design pressure. And in order to get a very large window or door to meet a certain design pressure, they would have to put SGP in it. Okay. And then the glass is when it's put together, the glass, that grilled cheese sandwich, let's say, which is the two pieces of glass and the vinyl in between, it goes into a giant pressure cooker. It's called an autoclave. There's a question here. Is the SGP one piece or two? The SGP is basically going to be, if it's an 090, it's going to be three layers of 030. The reason being is that in order to get it in a roll, it has to be thin. All right. So they'll actually fuse three pieces of 030 together to get the 090 thickness. Excellent question. Okay. So the autoclave is like a giant pressure cooker. It goes through a sequence of cycles, different pressures and temperatures. And the picture that you see on the right is a small autoclave that will hold one rack of glass that holds about 250 pieces of glass. Then there's large autoclaves, all right, that will actually, hold on a second here, get to the large one. This one here shows a large autoclave. You can see there's two racks, and there's a rack back here further. There's two racks of glass. Now, when you start adding all that weight onto a special track, the cart has to go onto a special track, kind of like a train track, because the wheels wouldn't be able to support the thousands of pounds of weight that it takes. All right, so that door is going to hydraulically close. You see these knobs will line up with the notches. Then those notches will slightly rotate just a little bit to create a compressed seal. All right. So what it's going to be doing in there now is on the next image here is this is what happens. It's going to heat up basically to about 280 degrees. All right. It's going to apply about 180 psi pressure, and it's going to bake in there for, actually, the baking time is 3 hours and 11 minutes to be exact. But that gives you an idea what happens in an autoclave. So you can see why the question comes up sometimes, why is impact glass so much more expensive? Well, instead of just one piece of glass, you got two. You got the expensive vinyl in between. You got the manpower and equipment basically to make it that add to that cost. So that's the reasons it becomes more expensive. No, someone just said NOAA.gov does not seem to work. Is that NOAA? Yes, it's NOAA. You are correct. I'm sorry. That's it. You are correct on that. NOAA.gov. Give that a shot. Okay. So that's what happens in an autoclave. So about 3 hours later, the glass comes out and the glass is crystal clear at that point. You can't see through the vinyl until it goes through the autoclave process. Okay. So the next thing we'll talk about on the agenda is window and door protection options. What are my options basically within the code? Well, this section of the code, R301.212, says that exterior glazings in buildings located in windborne debris regions shall be protected from windborne debris. Glaze opening protections and windborne debris shall meet the requirements of large missile tests of ASTM E1996 and ASTM E1886. All right. This is the windborne debris map. And again, this is if you go to the residential book, look under R30124. This is the map that you'll see. Okay. And what you'll see on here is it says areas within 1 mile of the coastal mean high water line where the ultimate design wind speed is 130 miles per hour or greater, or any location where the wind speed is over 140 miles an hour. This is basically for category 2. There's 4 categories and 4 maps. Category 2 is the one that most people use the most by far, probably 90% of the time. That's used basically for homes, businesses, and things of that nature. All right. So that's the most commonly used, but there's 4 different ones, and the wind speeds and maps will change slightly. The essential facilities, for example, like map 4, the color, dark color goes way up higher. So there are 4 maps. So go to the residential book and you can see them. Or I'd be happy to send them to you if someone wants. Or better yet, if you attend their 2-hour code class, I go over all 4 of them. ASTM 1996 test. What are those? Well, there's different levels of protection. There's the essential facilities, which would be like fire stations, police stations, things of that nature, hospitals, possibly even schools if they're being used as a shelter. Then there's basic protection, which is our homes and businesses. Unprotected, it would be a freestanding garage or barn type of a deal. It's uninhabited. All right. There's 4 different wind zones in the state of Florida, and each one if under basic protection. If you're under 30 feet mean roof height, this is what you need. Over 30 feet, a small missile. So there's either going to be a C, which is a 4.5 pound 2x4 shot at 40 feet per second, or a D, which is a 9 pound 2x4 shot at 50 feet per second. That's what the standards specify. This is a map I put in showing the 4 wind zones that we have in Florida. All right. Wind zone 4 is greater than 170 miles an hour. So here's your 170. So it's really just right here at the tip. It's Miami, in that area. And that's it. Wind zone 3 basically is going to run from 150 to 170. So that's this part of the state right here. The rest of the state is going to be in wind zones 1 or 2, which is like 90 some odd percent of the state. And so there's different requirements. They're not as stringent in those requirements. They can meet the 4.5 pound 2x4 versus a 9 pound 2x4 as far as the testing is concerned. This just shows this is going to show basically an air cannon in a test lab, and it's going to go through 3 pieces of glass. The first one that's going to go through is just typical glass and shows what that 2x4 represents. It doesn't matter whether it's a 4.5 pound or 5 or 9 pound. It represents what flying material would do in case of a hurricane. Okay. Oh, you can hear the video. Good. Thank you.
We're tied stronger than like.
That's tempered glass. People think because tempered glass is safety glazing, it's going to protect my home in a hurricane. No. Now, this is impact glass. In this, I want to point out 2 things on it. All right. The glass stays intact, as the man says, but glass will break if something hits it, but nothing goes through it. And as a result, there's no opening for the air to go through and the pressures to build up. And that's at the end of a hurricane, all you have to do is replace the glass, then you don't have to replace the window or the door. So that's the differences between the different types of glass. Then to meet that ASTM standard, it has to go through a cycling process. This is where basically it's going to look like it's breathing. It takes 8 hours to go through this process, right? Where it goes 4,500 positive, then 40 on the other side to go was 4,500 negative. Now, this is an example. Hopefully none of these belong to OSHA. I won't say who took this picture, even though it was me. And it shows that how far that glass is expanding. It's 1.5 inches. So in reality, the other 1.5 inches going the other way would be a 3 inch. All right. And it has to stay in there. Now, John has a question to me. We have 170-mile-an-hour zones as far north as St. Lucie County, north of West Palm Beach. Well, that's all part of a wind zone 4. So it does go up the coastline. So yes, it does. All right. But again, if you look at that map, you'll see it scoots right along the coastline. So another question. Oh, that was a question there. So it actually expands now that at the end of the test, that product has to be operational. So the homeowner can get out of it in case there's a window or in case there's a fire. So that's the type of damage that it goes through. So now what we're going to talk about a little bit very briefly is 24/7 protection. All right. And this is something I think that you as architects need to explain to people what the difference is too, as well, between hurricane protection or 24/7 protection. And I teach salespeople, do not sell impact windows just for hurricane protection. Sell it for 24/7 protection that includes hurricanes. This is just a video that a lot of you have probably seen. It's 2 guys trying to break into a storefront. All right. The first guy is a lookout guy. Probably it's poor resolution because it's a security camera, an old security camera. I actually found this several years, probably 10 years ago. So the security cameras are much better today. The guy they're going to break in somewhere. He never turned around and looked, and shows you don't have to be a genius. And I don't care who you are. That's funny stuff when you see how it does. And it does react like that. Something will bounce back. This is another one from over in Port St. Lucie, where 2 guys are going to try and break into a storefront, and they'll try and try and try. And they violated a couple of things. Is one is in most cases, thieves don't want to spend more than 10 seconds making noise so they don't draw attention to it. They stayed there for almost a minute trying to do it. But the dumb thing they didn't do is they never took time to see if the doors were even locked. How do they know the doors weren't locked? They could have just walked in. But that's 24/7 protection. Now, the way I explain this to a homeowner, right, and this is something you can use, it's a true story. I had a manufacturer in one of my classes say that him and his wife are one of our PGT dealers, and they go to work every day around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and they have a 14-year-old daughter that's very mature, looks much older than 14. She stayed home from school one day because she was sick. Well, they have impact windows and doors around their home. When they came home from work that day around 5 o'clock, the daughter stayed home. She was sick that day. The husband went to let the dogs in from the backyard, and there were basically several doors that were smashed with cement blocks at the bottom, which means someone tried to break in. Now that didn't, as he said, that did not give us hurricane protection that day, but I can't put a dollar price on a protection it gave us on our family, on our daughter being homesick. What could have happened at that point? That's what I mean by 24/7 protection. Yes, shutters are available by codes, things of that nature. But when do shutters protect you? Only when they're up. Shutters will protect in a hurricane, but they do not give 24/7 protection. And I think 24/7 protection is probably the most important advantage that impact window has. So now we want to talk about briefly about the 5S approach. What is that? Well, it's sound, safety, security, solar, and storm. These are the 5S's basically that impact glass can offer. Sound, basically protection from exterior noise. Safety, protection from shattered glass. Security, protection from burglaries. Solar, protection from UV fading. And then storm, protection from severe weather. So the sound barrier, with windows featuring laminated glass, irritating sounds such as traffic and airport noise is reduced drastically. Laminated glass can reduce perceived noise by up to 50%. A lot of times people will say, I can't believe how quiet it is. I don't hear the person mowing the lawn or next door, or the dog barking next door. Safety. Life happens when windows break. Standard annealed glass, or even the not impact glass, safety glazing, all right, is going to which is found in most homes, it's going to shatter and break. Laminated glass can shatter with enough force, but nothing's going to go through it. Security, that's what I talked about earlier, that 24/7 security. Not every window is cut out to protect homeowners like that. So, then we talked about the solar. Windows with laminated glass have been proven to effectively filter out 99% of the ultraviolet UV rays. Right? Laminated glass is equivalent to an SPF 72. So what it does do is take a look at this couch that was in front of a picture window. That's the way the couch looked like originally when you lift the couch, the pads up, and that's what it is on top. So it prevents your curtains and furniture from fading. Storm doors and windows with laminated glass pass the most stringent hurricane codes in the United States. All right. So let's talk a little bit briefly about some myths and facts that the general public have. Okay. First of all, people say, well, it's telling me sometimes, well, during a hurricane, we open our windows or just a little bit to allow the inside to equalize the pressure with the outside. That's old school. Sometimes people still think about that today. The truth of the matter is, experts today have proven just the opposite is true. The wind will cause the pressures to continue to build up until something gives, which is usually the roof, just like you saw in that video at the IBHS. All right. So it's very similar to blowing into a bag or a balloon, just like I explained earlier. So you do not want to open the windows to allow that wind to come through. Myths and facts, another one. People there that will say, well, you should place duct tape or on your glass, and that helps protect it from breaking during a hurricane, thus keeping the rain and wind from entering your home. It's partially true. What I mean by that, I'll show you in the next picture. If you use duct tape or any type of glass, what it will do perhaps is keep the glass into larger pieces, but it's going to come out. It's not going to keep the rain or wind from entering your home. Taping your window will have no effect in keeping them from breaking. All right, it may in fact make the larger pieces of glass become more dangerous. According to a 2012 survey that was commissioned by the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, Almost 7 in 10 people believe taping windows and glass doors is the right thing to do when you prepare for a hurricane. So look at this picture here. This was after Hurricane Charlie. It was a storefront. Well, they used duct tape, as you can see. Did it hold the glass together? Yeah, somewhat. But did it save anything on the interior? Absolutely not. In fact, I was told that I took this picture actually shortly after the hurricane ended, but before anything was done, this little ATV disappeared. That you get looting that happens in there. Another myth, in fact, only the windows and doors facing the open water need to be protected. I had a neighbor in Venice, Florida. All right, and we were close. We have coastal water behind us, basically. All right, and he said that he's putting up shutters one day, and I asked him if he needed any help. He says, "No, I'm almost done." I said, "We got the rest of the house to do." Well, I'm only putting it on the side facing the water. I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because that's where the hurricane's going to come in off of the water." So that's my neighbor. I had to, as my kids would say, educate them. All right. That during the hurricanes, the wind shift in direction as the storm passes. Regardless of the direction of the wind force, the opposite side of the house is going to experience negative pressures, which in many cases is even stronger than the positive pressures. So it doesn't make sense. It's again, that's a myth that's easily debunked. Another one, I've had this yet. People say my impact glass broke. It's not supposed to break. I live on a golf course, and I put impact glass on because I didn't want the glass to ever break. Well, the reality is it can and it will break if struck with sufficient force. However, impact glass is designed to remain into the opening up to certain limits to help protect the structure from collapse due to winds, pressures, and other factors. Impact glass is glass. It will get damaged if something hits it like this. You see it flying debris hit it, but it's not going to go through it so that the forces don't cause the damage and the rains don't go in and deteriorate everything in the home. All right. But that glass can be replaced after. Much easier and cheaper to replace the glass than it is the house. This is another myth. All impact products are made the same. No, they are not. All right. There are numerous types and thickness of glass, vinyl interlayers, fabrics, aluminum, and acrylics being used today in impact resistant products. There are as many ways to manufacture a product as there are manufacturers. Not all advertised impact resistant products are created equal. A good example of this is that I've oftentimes where someone might be selling a product from a company that tested all of their impact products to missile level D, which is a 9 pound 2x4 at 50 feet per second testing. And the competition that they're up against is using a missile level C, a 4.5 pound 2x4, got at 40 feet per second. Not the same product. And then there are companies out there that are using an 060 interlayer, which will work basically on that missile level C, but not on D. So again, they're not the same. There are differences in them. So you do have to pay attention to it and make sure when you're comparing one to another that you're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. This is a Florida state statute, a Florida statute that's still in effect. All right. This would actually put in after the all those series of hurricanes that we had back in the mid 2000s. All right, in other words, 2007 in that area. The product may not be advertised, sold, offered, provided, distributed, or marketed as hurricane, windstorm, or impact protection for windborne debris during a hurricane or windstorm unless it is approved pursuant to section and gives a section there. Any person who advertises, sells, offers, provides, distributes, or markets a product as hurricane or impact protection for windborne debris without such approval is subject to the Florida Deceptive and Unfair Trade Practices Act under Part 2 of Chapter 501, brought by the enforcing authority as defined in Section 501.203. All right. So, in other words, there are people out there selling. There's a guy out there selling shutters now, and he says that his shutter has an advantage over all the other shutters. He says that you can go inside of the house and you can just push it and it gets out. So if you have a fire, you can get out of the house quickly and easily. But he can't get a Florida product approval on it. simply because it's held onto the house, exterior of the house by Velcro. All right. So that's not going to stop any hurricane with negative pressure from sucking it right off. So he can't get it at product approval. So again, make sure that and that's what they're saying, that it's an approved product. It should be a Florida product or Miami-Dade approved product. The last thing is, where do I go for more information? All right. Well, first of all, you can go to the PGTI website, pgtinnovations.com. Obviously, I'm putting that because I still work with PGT as a consultant. Any authorized PGTI dealer. My Safe Home Florida has a program. Safe and Well List is a program. Blueprint for Safety. The IIBHS, that's a video that I showed with the homes blowing apart. Flash, which is the Federal Alliance for Safe Homes, or the International Hurricane Protection Association. These are all places you can gain more information. And I believe that you're going to find that my information is provided to you, that Wendy's going to provide for you. You feel free to reach out to me anytime you have a question, and I'm more than happy to help. All right, I'm not biased really on one over the other. It doesn't matter who the manufacturer is, but I'll give you a straight, honest answer. Okay. Now, someone has a question here. Why do missile levels have to speed and mass or length on the 2x4 instead of each level, instead of changing only one variable speed or mass? It's not very intuitive since I understand what you're asking here. There's a lot of people that question some of this stuff. That testing that we talk about there, that actually was brought over from Australia as a proven method. Is it the best method? And there are other ways to do it? Yes. If I was inventing a method today, I would not use a 2x4. Why? Is because a 2x4 with enough force compacts a little bit. All right. And it's not realistic of some of the things that don't compact, such as a roofing material that are made of clay and that. That's good. That's solid. All right. Or concrete. That's solid. That's not going to compact. But again, it is what it is. All right. But yes, so there are other ways that things could be tested, but this is what the building commission and everyone accepts as the accepted method for now. Okay. And that someone, Joel says again, are there any manufacturers making laminated insulated glass that are user serviceable to remove fogging after seals? No. Once you have an insulated piece of glass, you cannot repair it. If it has a seal break, it needs to be replaced. It's that simple. If it's a laminated insulated piece of glass, the whole thing has to be replaced. It cannot be serviceable. I don't know of anyone that has that. The difference that you'll find is that you won't find the seals break on a TPS system, all right, versus a super spacer. The reason being, the super spacer is a solid foam when it's put down, where TPS is a liquid. In glass, if you put it under a microscope and magnify it 2,000 times, you would actually see it's a series of peaks and valleys. It's not smooth like it feels. All right. And the liquid, the TPS, goes into those valleys. And that's again why it gets better adherence, and you won't have the seal breaks like you will with a super spacer. All right, everyone said thank you. Oh, thank you. Don't any other questions? Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Also, I want to point out that we do have PGT. It does have a architect specialist. It's Nancy Fine, and gives her email address and phone number if you want to reach out to her. All right, but feel free to reach out to me anytime you want. And again, I want to thank everyone for taking the time today and listening to this. And I hope that you learned a little bit of something on it, so you go home with something more than you started with. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Jim. What a wonderful presentation and answering all the great questions and a lot of good feedback. So just a couple quick reminders before we hang up.